When I first moved into the neighborhood, I thought I had found a quiet corner of suburban life. The streets were lined with maple trees, the lawns were neatly trimmed, and the cul-de-sac promised a sense of peace. My dog, Max, was my closest companion, an older Labrador with a calm personality. He wasn't one of those hyper dogs that barked at every passing car or squirrel. Most days, he spent his time lounging in the sun, occasionally wagging his tail at neighbors who passed by. To me, it seemed like a perfect arrangement. But peace doesn't last long when a Karen lives nearby. Her name was Linda, though most people quietly referred to her by the nickname she had earned through years of nitpicking and complaining. She had a way of inserting herself into other people's lives, and soon enough, Max became her target. It began subtly, with her glances across the street whenever he barked at the mailman. But those glances soon turned into comments, and before long, her disapproval became the soundtrack of our lives. What struck me was the exaggeration. Max barked no more than any normal dog would, yet Linda insisted he was an unbearable nuisance. She complained to the HOA, demanding fines and restrictions. She complained to the city, insisting noise ordinances were being violated. She even cornered me in my own driveway once, waving papers and pointing toward my yard as if Max was committing a crime. It didn't matter that most neighbors had no issue with him. In Linda's mind, every sound from my backyard was a personal attack on her peace. The situation escalated quickly. Soon, I was receiving letters, some official, others handwritten in her unmistakably aggressive style. Each one painted Max as a monster, a constant barker who made her life miserable. But I knew the truth. My dog slept most of the day, and when he barked, it was usually because someone walked too close to the fence. Even the HOA president, after coming by one afternoon, admitted privately that the complaints seemed exaggerated. Still, Linda's persistence created pressure. That's when I realized it wasn't about Max at all. It was about control. She needed something to complain about, some way to make herself the victim, and my dog was the easiest target. The more I thought about it, the more frustrated I became. Why should I be forced to tiptoe around in my own home because she decided to invent problems? I followed the rules. I kept Max leashed, picked up after him, and made sure he wasn't left outside at night. Yet none of it mattered. To Linda, he was the enemy, and by extension, so was I. It was during one sleepless night of my own, after rereading yet another hostile letter, that the idea began to form. If she wanted to complain about noise, maybe it was time she experienced what true disturbance felt like. Not in a way that broke the law, but in a way that reminded her she wasn't the only one with rights in this neighborhood. And once I found the perfect, legal method, I knew her nights would never be the same again. Once the idea rooted itself in my mind, I couldn't let it go. Karen wanted silence, but she had gone so far out of her way to make life miserable that I felt no guilt in returning the favor. The trick was to do it legally, something she couldn't challenge with another complaint or letter. I needed a method that was both effective and impossible to argue against. That's when I discovered the concept of ultrasonic pest repellers. These little devices, perfectly legal, emitted high-pitched frequencies designed to drive away rodents, raccoons, and stray animals. To the human ear, they were subtle, barely audible, almost like a faint whine in the background. But when placed carefully and set at the right level, they created a persistent irritation, especially for someone overly sensitive to noise. I ordered a set of them online, reading every review and forum post about their effectiveness. Some claimed they couldn't hear a thing, while others admitted the sound drove them insane if they were close enough. That was exactly what I wanted, something that wouldn't bother me or Max, but would gnaw at Karen's nerves day after day. When the package arrived, I wasted no time. Under the cover of a normal evening routine, I placed 2 units along the edge of my property, angled directly toward her bedroom windows. I made sure they were within range but still fully on my land, carefully following every guideline to avoid breaking any rules. After all, these were marketed as harmless, eco-friendly tools for homeowners. Nothing about them violated HOA policies, city ordinances, or even common courtesy, at least on paper. The first night, I waited. At 10 p.m., the neighborhood quieted down as usual. I sat in my living room, lights dimmed, and listened for any reaction. At first, there was nothing. But then, faintly across the street, I saw her blinds shift. A shadow moved back and forth. Soon after, her porch light flicked on, then off again. By midnight, I noticed her pacing along her side yard, clearly searching for the source of her sudden irritation. I almost laughed at the irony. She had spent weeks claiming my dog kept her awake at night, and now, even while Max snored peacefully on his bed, she couldn't get any rest. The sound was doing exactly what I hoped, needling its way into her home, impossible to ignore, impossible to prove malicious. By the second night, the results were even clearer. Her car left the driveway at nearly 2 in the morning, returning half an hour later. I imagined her desperate attempt to escape the sound, only to find it waiting for her when she came back. The next morning, dark circles under her eyes were impossible to miss, even from across the street. But the real victory came when she started complaining again, this time not about Max, but about strange noises in the neighborhood. She stormed into an HOA meeting, insisting someone was targeting her with high-pitched sounds. She described it in detail, her voice sharp and frantic, while the board members exchanged puzzled looks. For once, it wasn't me under scrutiny. It was her. And watching the tide shift, I knew this was only the beginning of her sleepless nightmare. The weeks that followed were a slow unraveling of Karen's composure. At first, she treated the high-pitched noise as if it were a minor inconvenience, a temporary annoyance she could complain about until someone else fixed it. But the sound was constant, unrelenting, and subtle enough that most neighbors either didn't notice or weren't bothered by it. She, however, couldn't escape it. Her house became her prison. She would open her windows at night, then slam them shut again minutes later. She tried sleeping with earplugs, but I could see the frustration in her body language each morning when she stepped outside. The once perfectly manicured woman began to show signs of exhaustion, messy hair, wrinkled clothes, and those ever-deepening dark circles beneath her eyes. Soon, her energy shifted from targeting me to battling the phantom noise. She hired pest control companies, convinced the problem was some infestation. Trucks with ladders and equipment lined her driveway more than once, only for the workers to leave empty-handed, shrugging at her insistence that something was hidden in her walls. She called the city again, filing noise complaints that led nowhere. Every inspector who came by admitted they couldn't detect anything unusual. The irony was delicious. For so long, she had exaggerated Max's harmless barking, trying to weaponize the HOA and city ordinances against me. Now, she had become the one spinning wild stories, desperate for anyone to believe her. Neighbors began whispering about her behavior, not mine. The image she worked so hard to maintain, that of the neighborhood's self-appointed guardian, was crumbling. Meanwhile, Max and I lived peacefully. He enjoyed his daily naps, his walks, and his treats, blissfully unaware of the chaos across the street. I had no reason to fear new complaints, because her credibility was gone. Even the HOA, once quick to forward her accusations, grew tired of her. One board member even joked within earshot that she should worry more about her own household than everyone else's. The final straw came during one of her late-night outbursts. She stood on her porch in her robe, yelling at the empty street about the humming and the torture she was enduring. Porch lights flicked on up and down the block, but instead of sympathy, she was met with sighs and closed curtains. In that moment, she wasn't the authority figure she wanted to be, she was just the neighborhood nuisance. And just like that, the balance shifted for good. The HOA stopped entertaining her letters. The city dismissed her calls. Neighbors began avoiding her entirely. She was isolated, sleepless, and powerless, all because she couldn't leave well enough alone. As for me, I eventually unplugged the devices. I had made my point, and by then, the damage to her reputation was permanent. Karen no longer had the energy or credibility to come after Maximum. She had learned the hard way that you can only cry wolf so many times before no one listens anymore. In the end, she wanted silence. And now, silence was all she had, inside her house, alone with her sleepless nights.